Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to the motherland of Scotland once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. So we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had lots of nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would most definitely say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, although in recent times they have been doing a good few lagers and fruity sours, and a couple of imperial stouts have been kind of regular over the last few years as well. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of two that I picked up here in Hong Kong, and I was trying to get through the fridge full of beer that I have already, but when Overtone come, that's just it. So I broke that promise to myself. And the beer we're going to have a look at today is one that is supposed to be very, very nice. It's a style that I've had from them many times before, one that I know they can do very well. So needless to say, I'm very much looking forward to trying this one. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the west of my hometown of Stirling, to Glasgow. We're going to go to Yoker to be precise. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Marble Skies. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this is yet another New England hazy, imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this is another beer that I picked up from the wonderful Gur Beer, and the One Mall in Tsim Sha Tsui here in Hong Kong. They always get a very, very good selection of stuff. I follow the Instagram and just go in and pick up the new stuff when it arrives. And this one came in about 2 days ago, and it seems to be really quite fresh actually. So that is absolutely what we want. But yeah, always cool to return to Overtone Brewing, and always nice to do some Scottish reviews while I'm out here in Asia. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing, and that will no doubt be added to as time goes on. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is hugely appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just put in your hometown, state, whatever you like, into the little search bar. If I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist, and check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really interesting things on at the channel these days. But yeah, let's go into my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Overtone Brewing quickly before we taste the beer. So as I've mentioned to you already, Overtone Brewing are based in Glasgow, Scotland's largest city on the west coast, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. So he had been a home brewer for a number of years before he founded the brewery, and he decided to go with the name Overtone for his brewery because of his love of techno music, and that's the same reason they have a lot of these kind of roundels on their cans. They're very, very very sort of techno orientated. So I think that's pretty cool. I know that Peter the Clueless Drinker loves the artwork as well. But in the early days, Bo Wei hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire over in the US, to come in as his head brewer. He previously worked as a head chef, but also as a brewer in England, New York, and he also worked in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, who do some very nice Belgian style beers, and I recommend that you check them out. But also involved at the brewery is Martin Conahan, who had worked in the craft beer scene in New Zealand for a number of years. He does take part in the brewing as well, from what I understand, but does a lot of other things around the company as well. And these days they've got Charlie Irving as well, who's involved in the brew team, and he comes from a background of home brewing and previously worked for another local brewery in Glasgow as well. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank. That was where my grandparents were from, and they began their operations there back in 2018. But the brewery don't have a fixed range, if you like, although there are beers that return quite regularly. And they're always brewing different things, and they were the first brewery in Scotland really to focus on the New England hazy IPAs, but they do West Coast IPAs. I've not tried a black IPA from these guys actually, but certainly one of the most interesting ones I had from them was the Rwandan Coffee IPA. That thing was absolutely beautiful. I think that might have been the first beer that I ever tried from these guys, come to think of it. But over the years they've continued to expand the brewery infrastructure and get their beers out there a little bit more. These guys became very, very popular when their cans went down to England. Actually, that really started to spread the word about them. I know when the English beer tubers raved about these beers for a wee while. I think they got them a year or two after I first found them in Scotland. But yeah, as of April 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 210 different kinds of beer. I think we've reviewed about 30 or so on the channel so far. But yeah, these guys are pretty damn prolific these days, and they're always doing some very, very interesting stuff. And I love trying all the new things that they've done when I go back to the motherland. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Overtone Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. I'll just let you have a wee look at the can on this one again before we open up. As you can see, it is the standard 440 milliliter can there. Kind of similar artwork to what we've seen from Overtone before. Let me just rotate that around. There you can see Overtone Brewing. This one actually just says Overtone, doesn't even say Overtone Brewing Company. But yeah, Marble Skies, 8%. It tells you on the side here, this one, Marble Skies Double IPA. This double IPA was inspired by Django Django. I looked them up. They're a rock band apparently, mirroring the double nature of its name and reflecting the double dry hopping process. We used Citra and Nelson hops, resulting in a blend of tropical and wine-like flavour. So yeah, it's got Citra and Nelson both in pellet form and in cryo as well. So the cryo obviously gives you this very smooth, slightly oily green component. But we know both of these hops very well. Of course, Citra is the classic American high alpha acid hop, 14%. It gives you like this big kind of juicy mango character with a wee bit of grapefruit and passion fruit and peach behind it, but it can also give you in a New England IPA a sort of lemon limey character. In a West Coast IPA it'll give you a bit of gooseberry and lychee. Nelson Sauvignon will of course always give you that big white green grapey gooseberry sort of thing. New Zealand hop, 16% alpha acid. But yeah, I paid I think 120 Hong Kong dollars for this one, which is about £12 sterling, so quite a bit more than I would have paid back home. But it is an import beer, and I would have paid probably the similar markup for one for a Hong Kong beer imported into Scotland, of course. But yeah, I don't care. I like Overtone. It's still cheaper than I would have paid going out to drink it in the pub. But yeah, Marble Skies, 8% double IPA. This one. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Really looking forward to this. Do make sure you check out the link to Gerbeer in the video description below, though. That's the shop that are supplying a lot of the beers that I'm reviewing for you here on the channel, of course. But yeah, I think that's enough for the moment. We'll put a little bit more in before we actually taste the beer. But anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured pretty much as you would expect from any New England Hazy IPA. Before the head disappears, we can see that this one's poured with about a finger and a half maybe of a cream coloured head. You can see some foamy bubbles on the surface and a few kind of bigger bumpier ones the further up that you go. But yeah, the colour of this one is pretty nice actually. I do like it. It's quite a sort of pale pineapple mango juice sort of colour, this one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, you don't often have to care about that when it comes to New England Hazy IPAs. So yeah, this one looks pretty much as you would expect. The level of haze in this one, it's actually one of the soupier and gloopier ones I can think of that I've seen from Overtone. But remember, the level of haze depends on oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. So yeah, that's what all the factors that are in play here. This one doesn't have too much in the way of visible carbonation. If I put my hand behind the glass, you can see just how soupy and gloopy this one actually is. But yeah, nothing unusual about this beer's appearance when you consider what style it is. It certainly looks as you would expect from the New England IPA style, and one of the lighter ones I think I've seen over the last little while, but certainly not the palest. I think that's definitely fair to say. Yeah, I think we can go on and have a wee look at the aroma now. I'm very, very curious about this one. So let's do this. Oh yeah. Just as good as you would always expect from Overtone. Now, one thing I'm curious about this one for me comes across as being very well balanced between the barley malt and the wheat malt, actually. So, as I've said on the channel many times before, when it comes to New England IPAs, I think there are 6 elements to think about in the flavour. Yeasty, sort of farmhousey character, rye leaning graininess, those are a bit more prominent in American New England IPAs, or American brewed ones, I should say. Wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. This one for me is actually quite smooth. I'm getting quite a little bit of oatiness out of it. We'll come back to that in a minute, but yeah, good little bit of wheaty bite and quite a lot of kind of fluffy white bread. And it does say on the back that this one contains barley and oats. And does it say when this one was canned? Packaged 16th of April 2024. That's pretty damn good going, actually. This beer is only about 2 weeks old, actually, in that case, because I'm drinking this at the very start of May, so it's just over 2 weeks old, actually, when I'm getting this one. So I have to say, the turnaround for getting these, the freshness of the beers that Gerbier are putting out there is pretty damn good, actually. I'm very impressed at that. So yeah, because I was going to say I'm getting a wee bit of oaty dryness out of this one, which is interesting because it made me wonder how old fresh the beer actually was, because when it comes to oatiness in your New England IPAs, quite often that's a very good indicator of how fresh your beer is. The creamier the oats are, the fresher it is. The older the beer is, the drier they tend to be. Very rough measure, but I think it holds up from experience. But yeah, let's break the aroma of this beer down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. But I will say it smells absolutely great, this one. But nothing unusual, I would say. Nothing madly different about this one compared to other New England IPAs we've had or other overtones we've had. But yeah, this one, it smells, for me, it leans a little bit more toward the oily and creamy side of the New England spectrum, but it's great. Backbone of this one, lovely fresh kind of sort of hedgehog white bready bread crust in there. It's absolutely great. Little bit of woodiness and a little bit of kind of crackery character as well, which is something you very often get with this particular style of beer, and that quite often comes from the yeastiness. But yeah, a little bit of sweet brown bread in there. Not too much, actually, just a little bit of like a sweet wholemeal brown bread. On top of that, you have a little bit more. You've got a lot of quite dense and quite sweet, fluffy white bread in that as well. At the back of the nose, you can certainly smell the wheaty character just kind of giving you that little bit of bite. I think it's very, very nice too. Yeah, you've got that little bit of kind of wheaty bitiness in there, and you've got a lovely sort of, I would say, I get a little bit of an almost kind of Skittles note out of this one, which is quite interesting. That's another product that comes off with some of the yeasts. But yeah, you can smell the lovely oaty character in this one. Like I said, I'm quite surprised with this one because I'm getting a wee bit of oaty dryness out of this, which is interesting. But yeah, certainly a good little bit of creamy oaty character. And of course, because it's a double IPA, there is a wee bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, but not overly much, I would say that. Yeah, a little bit of sweetness in there, maybe a wee touch of like McVitie's digestive biscuit as well. So all in all, the malty side of this one is quite nice, but the more that I smell of it, the more I'm getting kind of nice wheaty characters out of this beer. But I like it. I certainly like how the malty and yeasty side of this one goes together. It does get a wee bit drier the more that you smell of it as well. But yeah, I think we can go on to the hoppy side of things then. So as I've often said on the channel, there are 3 types of hoppings you can do when it comes to IPAs. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. Normally that gives you quite a lot of bitterness and a very deep, dank green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place usually within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly flavour and aroma, but also a little bit of bitterness, and it gives you a very bright green component in terms of flavour and aroma. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma and gives you quite a bright green component as well. You can smell with this one, I think there could be a little bit of early addition hopping going on with this one, but just quite minimal amounts, to be honest with you, because there is a little touch of that deep dank character in there, but at the same time with the green component you can smell the sort of smoothness of it from the cryo is very distinctive in that way. But this one for me, there's a lot of nice kind of bright floral aromaticity. You've also got some really nice kind of zesty grassy character coming out of this beer as well. So for me, I think it goes together really nicely in terms of that green component. But as I say, the cryo sort of mellows the whole thing out and makes it quite smooth and quite nice and oily in that particular regard. Yeah, lovely stuff. On the hoppy side, or on the fruity side of things, I should say, we're still talking about the hops. It's kind of what you'd expect. I do get a lot of the kind of more oily, gooseberry, white green grape sort of thing from the Nelson Sauvin, and I always find when you use Nelson Sauvin, when you use it with cryo version, it can dominate a little bit. It really feels like it's the backbone of the beer. The Citra in this case is certainly detectable, but I really could just be me. I'm getting some of the kind of sharper peachy notes out of it, and a wee bit of the kind of really like ripe juicy mango, and you know, some apricots and some pineapples and stuff like that as well. But in honesty, especially when you sugar the beer up, I really think that the Nelson Sauvin kind of takes the lead in this one a little bit when it comes to the aroma. So yeah, that's a really interesting point, I think, that has to be made about this one. But aroma wise, it's a very, very nice smelling beer. Yeah, I think it's lovely, this one. I mean, say nothing I've not seen or smelled from Overtone before, but if it's going to be another very good hazy IPA, I'm certainly not going to complain. But yeah, I really like the aroma of this one. I think this is going to be great. So as I always say, check out the aroma of the beer for a little while before you actually taste the thing. I always think that's half the experience when it comes to craft beers, but I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. That looks lovely. So yeah, this is the Marble Skies, an 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from the wonderful Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker, Renfrewshire through in Glasgow. Big shout out to Bilko and Brenny, of course, my favourite Glasgow beer tubers, along with Sofa King Drunk 66. Love those guys. Need to do some more filming with them at some stage. But let's get stuck into this. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. Very, very smooth New England IPA, this one. Very sort of getting a wee bit of a sniffle, actually. It's annoying. I think it's the air conditioners here in Asia that do that to me. But yeah, for me, this one, lovely, smooth and kind of creamy New England. Certainly shows a bit more wheaty bitiness into the aftertaste. I think that's absolutely fair to say. But yeah, I really like how this pieces together, for sure. So yeah, for me, this is really, really nice. It actually has a wee bit more bitterness to it as well than I was expecting. And it has been kept cold all the way here as well. But yeah, this is really, really nice actually. It shows a bit more yeasty character too. But yeah, lots of wheaty bitiness, lots of bread. The oats are there, but a wee bit more yeastiness and a wee bit more bitterness than I was expecting, going from the aroma as well. But all in all, big thumbs up to Overtone Brewing once again. Another very, very solid beer. We wouldn't expect any less. Let's break down the flavour of this beer then and describe it for you more in depth. Middle third of your palate. Backbone of the beer is that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust. So I really like that in this one. So yeah, fresh hedgehog white bready bread crust. A little bit further forward then, you've got a nice wee bit of a woody character. And above the bread crust, I'm getting quite a little bit of, I'm getting quite a little bit of like a crackery type note coming out of this one as well, which I think is very, very nice. I think the more that you drink of this, the more that you drink of this, the sort of juicier and things it becomes, and the creamier it becomes as well. So yeah. As you go further up in the flavour, you can feel you've got a lovely little bit of, you've got a lovely little bit of kind of fluffy white bread in there, and that's the barley malt backbone of the beer, absolutely. But then, above that, and I'm just wondering actually, I think maybe, yeah, you've maybe got a little brown wholemeal bready layer as well, because certainly into the aftertaste you get a wee touch more kind of graininess and dryness out of this one. So yeah, maybe above the cracker layer there's a wee bit of a wholemeal brown bread. Then you've got like a taller and more fluffy white bread. Then there's the dense but smoother wheaty white bread as well. I really like that. So yeah, dense wheaty white bread in there, and then you also have a little bit of bitiness. If you think about the wheaty layer in this beer, at the back of that middle third of the palate, it's certainly got a wee bit more sort of bite to it. You can certainly feel that bit more wheaty bitiness there, but as you come further forward, it certainly smooths out a wee bit more. So yeah, it's kind of interesting as well, because you know, European wheat I think is a little bit more bitey, if you like, than American wheat. When I was over in the States, I found a lot of the American wheaty leaning New England IPAs were very, very smooth actually. So that was interesting to kind of build that knowledge into my palate, if you like. But above the wheaty layer for me, this is when you're starting to get the oaty character. So if you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel the oats are quite dense and quite smooth. The more I drink of this one, is it really that creamy? A little bit. Yeah, if you go down the middle line of your tongue, yeah, you do get that kind of more oaty, creamy character out of this one. But as you spread out from the middle line of your tongue towards the edges, you certainly get a little bit more of a kind of drier, oaty character to this beer. And I think that's very, very nice as well. So, yeah, the way that pieces together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, drier kind of oaty notes out of this one are pretty good. But then the dead centre of your palate, you start to get a wee bit of sweetness, and that is of course the alcohol coming out of the beer. So you've got that little circle in the middle of your palate there, which is like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. So getting quite a little bit of that, which is the booze. Then as you move further out from it, it's got a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type quality to it as well, which I also really quite like. Yeah, interesting. Certainly interesting stuff. But yeah, I think that little bit of biscuitiness and the malty character that you get in this one in the middle third of the palate is really quite nice. So it's a big thumbs up from me. Now let's go and look at the back third of the palate and the yeasty side of the beer. So remember, more sweet flavours come out further forward on the palate. Drier and bitter flavours tend to come out further back. And the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate are going to give you similar flavours, just at different intensities. But yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, then the more wheaty bitiness in there. But the base of that back third of the palate, you've got a really nice, drier, white bready kind of hedgehog bread crust in there. Above that, you've got a wee bit of the more kind of Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing. So yeah, a wee bit of Jacob's cream cracker. Then you have a brown bready layer on top of that, which is like a little bit more kind of fluffy and yes, a little bit more kind of light and airy and a wee bit drier as well. Then you've got the white bready character, which feels a lot lighter and more airy, but a little bit kind of fluffier as well and a wee bit drier. Then you can feel above that, you've got the nice kind of bitey, wheaty, bitey sort of layer coming out of this one, which I think is really quite nice. Yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this one, I think is very, very nice. So I like that kind of wheaty, bitey character that comes out of it. On top of everything else, you start to get the yeasty side of this beer. So yeah. So the yeasty side of this beer, for me, is kind of what you'd expect, to be honest with you. Like, you can feel that airy yeasty note on the top of the back third of the palate. So for me, there's a little bit of a dense kind of sweeter brown bready character in the middle. As you move further out from that, it's a little bit more like a kind of crusty white bready character. Then around everything else, it's a little bit more of a kind of just, crusty white bready sort of thing. So definitely, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down a little bit more. And yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. On the on the hoppy side of things, this beer is pretty much what you'd expect. if you know these hops, of course, and these are quite common ones. In the back corners of the palate, I do actually get a little bit of earthiness, which I wasn't quite expecting. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, you can feel there is a little bit of a kind of piney resin character coming out of this one. And both of these hops are capable of giving you pine resin in the green component if they're used as early additions. And I think that's what's going on here. Like I say, this beer does have a little touch of bitterness to it. But yeah, as you move further forward, the piney resin sort of converts to a more floral aromatic kind of spice, which is interesting. And then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more sort of grassy, I would say, as well. And on the grassy side of things, that little bit of zesty grassiness and a wee bit of the floral note, you can certainly feel that more oily, slick character from the cryo coming out of this one. So yeah, it's got some really interesting kind of green component notes to it. But certainly from memory, this is one of the more bitter New Englands that I've come across from Overtone. We have seen this before. I can't name a specific beer, come to think of it, but yeah, certainly this one has got that wee bit more bitterness, and I'm surprised about that, pardon me, when I consider that it's got the cryo in it. Actually, I would have expected it to be a little bit more kind of smoother in a sense, but anyway, still good. And let's have a little look at the front third of your palate then, the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, a little bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread on top of that, and the bit of kind of wheaty bitey character in there as well. The base of that front third of your palate, you get the little bit of kind of bread crust, of course, you've got the crackery layer, brown bread, white bread, the wheaty note there, which acts quite smooth, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the way this one goes together in that regard is really quite nice. But yeah, the fruity side of the beer in this one, I think, is really quite nice. And it's what you'd expect. So at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of the stronger grapefruit, of course. Then you have the kind of big, juicy, sort of peachy kind of thing. Then lovely big mango-y notes, quite ripe mango, incidentally. And as you reach the middle of that front third of your tongue, you've got a wee bit of the drier apricot underneath, a juicier pineapple. Then as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about that oily gooseberry, white green grapey kind of thing from the Nelson Sauvignon. But maybe just behind the very front tip of your tongue, there's a little bit of the sort of lemony limey character from Citra as well, and that just mixes in with the kind of grassy esters on the front tip of your tongue. But overall, this beer, the thing that surprised me about it is that it's got a little bit more bitterness to it, which I didn't expect when it was using cryo, but still very, very pleasant beer, this one, and I'm quite happy with it, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been really nice. So yeah, this well, we can leave it at that for the tasting. We still need to round off with the mouthfeel. Brain fart there, guys. So mouthfeel wise, I would say this beer is kind of top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation is nice and smooth. This beer, it does have a wee bit of an oily slickness to it, but at the same time it's got a wee bit of creaminess, not creepiness. My English is terrible these days. So yeah, oily and slick, nice and kind of creamy at the same time. In terms of the IBU count in this one, I would say this beer has a really nice, this one, it really has that nice little bit of bitterness. IBU wise, I think this is maybe about 40, maybe 50 at push actually. But it does have a wee bit of piney resin character, which indicates some early addition hopping, but the cryo gives you a nice kind of smoothness on the front curve of your tongue. The malty base has got a wee bit of kind of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a bit of creaminess and a slight sweetness on top. This really isn't, the more you drink of this beer, it really isn't that sweet either. But then yeah, you've got the lovely juicy fruity notes out of this one, and it leans further into the aftertaste. It gives you a wee bit more dryness, this beer, generally speaking, but it also gives you that more oily Nelson Sauvignon type note. But yeah, all in all, another very, very good New England double IPA, this one from Overtone. And I'm glad I got to try this. Cool to see these beers making their way out here to Hong Kong. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing Company as well. And we will return to these guys in a couple of videos' time, because I've got one more to look at, and I'm sure we'll return to these guys periodically as we go forward. But thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Overtone's social media, and do check out my friends at Bilko and Brenny, and also Sofa King Drunk 66, and the guys at Gerbeer here in Hong Kong as well. Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next one.